You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Hello and welcome to Orange County's longest running business talk show. And yes, I am your host, Rick Franzi. And boy, do we have a good show planned for you today. Why do you ask? Because our guest is Garnet Heraman. He is many things, soon to be published author, but we'll talk about that at another time. I have him on the show because he's the co-founder of Aperture Venture Capital. Welcome to the show, Garnet.
Thank you so much, Rick. I really appreciate you having me, and I really appreciate all the hard work Haley put into it to get this organized.
She is a hard worker, and I appreciate her too. So let's go with your origin story. Take us back in time, and what was the inspiration, motivation for you to start this fund?
So a lot of the inspiration comes from business life led, right? Business experience, life experience. And a lot of it had to do with essentially, I don't know what to call it, the homogeneity of the world that I occupied from the late 90s till, maybe 2008 or so. And the inability to kind of have access to the right types of people at the right time and this sort of thing. So, it comes from this notion of wanting to visualize what venture capital looks like in the future, and around this notion of the multicultural mainstream. What happens when the world is changing and it's no longer looks like the way it looked demographically, and there's this influx of diversity and immigration and all, and the world changes. So it stemmed from that on my side. On my fund partner side, it stemmed from his literally his experiences at Comcast, Morgan Stanley, with Hearst and Samsung as an advisor, and what it meant to be a corporate investor and to be tasked with certain things that were not really productive from the standpoint of investing for alpha, investing for returns. So we'll have more time to unpack, but it really comes from lived experience, both mine and my fund partner, and how to do things differently and how to do things maybe more lucratively, more productively in the future.
So any pivots to the initial business thesis since can you share that journey?
I don't know to what extent it's a true pivot, but we started out with every fund starts, especially debut fund, starts out with a fund thesis, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm going to invest this amount of money, this kind of company, this a market segment, this kind of founder, whatever, right? We had all that, and then we had this wrinkle, the bulk of the money, 90+% of the money comes from corporations in the case of our fund. So it's a very unique capital formation strategy. Bank of America, PayPal, Truist, FIS, Mass Mutual, Progressive Insurance, little companies like that. And so it was purpose-built to be unusual. And so the pivots, quote, pivots come from, this notion of, hey, how are we going to do engagement with these massive organizations with bureaucracy, egos, territoriality, the whole bit, right? And so the real pivot comes from just delineating in detail, right? How to do the engagement. And I'll give you for the benefit of the investment companies, for the benefit of the corporations, just how to actually do it in real life. Perfect example, real quick. We always thought of ourselves as feeders, right? We're going to feed deals to these big corporations and, grow them from seed to Series A, Series B, and then all of a sudden they'll be, investable from the standpoint of a corporation. And as it turns out, that's true. But we, in a number of instances, we ended up being the white knight investor for investments that came from the corporation. When they were having challenges, and their portfolio companies were not doing what they needed to do, or they needed, friendly capital to take out adversarial capital. All of this was, unbeknownst. We didn't actually foresee this. And so that whole notion about the bilateral flow of value back and forth, and let's say deal flow and that sort of thing. That's a unique difference from the original thesis.
So let's look at the venture capital fund, and maybe you can talk to me about the focus and kind of what your role is and what you're looking for, but just
Sure.
Philosophically talk to us about your fund.
Sure. Fintech, seed stage, and both of those things need to be defined. Fintech broadly defined. So fintech, cybersecurity, marketplaces, e-commerce, meaning the intersection of, right?
Mm-hmm.
Medical billing, retail stock trading. So any interface where the legacy focus of fintech, payments, banking, investment, and insurance a little bit, where they touch this brave new world, right? So either new populations, new channels, new distribution, new technology in the case of AI, and any interface like that has AI in it or uses AI to power it or leverage it, that's obviously very high priority for us. Average check about $1 million. I've gone as high as $1.5 million. We reinvest at least once, and then by the time we reinvest a second time, one of those aforementioned corporate LPs in the fund typically starts investing directly, and so that becomes another one of our little, that's sort of one of our superpowers, is that we can bring other big investors into. Oh no, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. No, you're fine. We love the fact that people work from home.
Okay. And so another one of our superpowers is that we bring the syndicate at a certain stage. We bring the syndicate of very, very high-powered corporate investors.
So is Orange County a good place to have a fund like this? You're not originally from Orange County.
No, I'm a New York expat, and I've only been here since 2019.
And are you finding this is the right place?
Yeah, to some extent. We have one deal in Los Angeles. I've looked at deals in Orange County. I've looked at deals in San Diego. So here's a little known fact for you that sort of supports the sort of us being domiciled here. One of our domiciles, right? We're based in New York and Philly as well as on the West Coast. So Irvine is one of the largest clusters of fintech companies, venture-backed fintech companies in the entire country. I had no idea, and so in and around Irvine, I mean everything, right? Tustin, all around Irvine,
right?
Almost 40 venture-backed fintech companies, and a surprising number of later stage fintech, so like Series C, Series D. Sizable companies. So, there's no shortage of opportunities here. Universities here, UCSD is here. There's a lot of intellectual property coming out of the universities. We're a young fund. We've only been around since 21, so I expect to do more deals in Southern California. But we also do, we also look at things in Northern California. What a surprise, right?
Right. Right. Well, and if you can be anywhere, this is not a bad place to be from a standard of living perspective, right?
Exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, a lot of the intangible competencies, right, kind of live between your ears, right? And so that does that. And then with the ability to travel out of 3 or 4 different airports, right? San Diego, John Wayne, LAX, Ontario, Long Beach, there's no shortage of access to, the other coast, the Midwest, Southwest. So it worked out fine for us.
You must have intentionally decided that you were going to relocate to Orange County for some reason from the East Coast?
Well, it depends. I saw a great vanity license plate to this point. Yesterday it was YS space DEAR. And so
okay, it took me a minute.
So my short answer to that is that my wife wanted to move here, and I was I'm really kind of a late bloomer as far as like learning that magical phrase, that keeps your wife happy, your partner happy.
Yeah.
So my wife grew up part of her childhood near Oceanside.
Oh, okay.
She knew this coast from way back when, and when we decided to leave New York and all the hustle and bustle, she decided pretty quickly she wanted to be in Laguna, and then after exploring Laguna, we settled on Monarch Beach. So
beautiful. South Orange County is very special. Yeah,
it really is. I mean, we're big fans of Italy, and we travel back and forth, and I got to tell you, it's a toss-up in some ways. It's really, I think there's a slight edge, like culture and art and design, to Italy, but
sure,
weather, quality of life, all that stuff is pretty high around here.
Yeah, this is a good place to be. So I'm wondering, in all of your travels, Garnet, is there a piece of business advice that you've picked up that you could share with my audience today?
Sure. A few. I was lucky. I grew up in the tech business with mentors who were older than me, 10, 12 years older than me. And some of them had, in turn, been the beneficiary of a lot of business advice. One of my longest, long-term business partners from when I was just starting out, his grandfather was the chairman of Salomon Brothers. So, there's a lot of like absorption into these intergenerational knowledge that I feel like I've been the recipient of. So from that universe in particular, certain little gems, like trust everyone, but always cut the cards, right? Just the importance of business process and discipline, but still trying to maintain an open mind, open heart about possibilities and things like this. How to negotiate a deal. I mean, for me personally, it hasn't changed in almost 25 years. I was taught, put a fair deal on the table proactively and then defend the hell out of it. And to this day, that's how I negotiate, whether it's for our fund or for buying the house or whatever it is. You put a fair offer on the table and then defend it, and don't worry too much about other people haggling. So I have a list of these things that just kind of end up. There's 5 or 6 of these things, and they end up being. And by the way, they'll be in the book. So
yes.
And they end up being my kind of a combination of like business, but also ethical, compass for how to guide yourself and your behaviors and your career.
Excuse me. I love that. Put a fair deal on the table. I'm wondering, when you do that, do people believe it's a fair deal?
That's the thing, right? That's why I countered with and don't worry about the haggle part, because there are certain people, there are certain cultures, out there that just literally they can't help themselves. They're gonna haggle no matter what, right?
Right.
And I feel like we've all been taught to some extent to respond with a counteroffer or and in the spirit of haggling. The real sort of nuance to that axiom, in my opinion, is that in order to put a fair deal on the table, you have to really stop and empathize with the other side, right? And to me, that's the nuance, right? That's the real nuance. The haggling is at what it is, right? You either have the appetite to listen to that nonsense as it comes back, and the patience to like rebut it, or you don't, right? But the real nuance is to try to empathize enough with the other side and really feel like what it is that they need to get out of out of this particular transaction, the value that they need, and then be able to put it together, right?
What a great starting point for a relationship is to come at it from that perspective, Garnet.
That's a really great observation on your part. So, even though there are people who are inherently not in line with this way of thinking, and they might haggle and whatever, what happens is if you successfully transact, what I've seen over the years is that it is, in fact, exactly what you said. It's the first step in a long, productive, mutually respectful relationship.
Right.
Whereas prior to that transaction, you may have been total or near strangers, right? So
and that feels like that becomes sort of your brand in your industry too. What people may say about you.
One hopes, right? I in my case, I have a number of shortcomings that always threaten to
we all do.
Take over the personal branding part, and I'm sure if you ask my wife, she'll have the list ready to go.
I have to meet her. I can't. You've painted an interesting picture of your spouse. You teased us a bit about your book, so I just want to open the window a little bit and say, is there more that you would like to tell us about what you're planning to have in your book?
Sure. Well, first, it's an homage to my mom. I grew up as the son of a single mom immigrant, and the irony is, within weeks of us launching this fund, which is a fairly unique accomplishment in the annals of business. It's very hard to launch a VC fund of any size, and ours is reasonably sizable for a first-time fund, $75 million. My mom passed away. And so she never really got to see the culmination of all of this crazy entrepreneurship I did, all of the, bizarre private investing things that I did prior to getting to Aperture. So it's it's an homage to my mom and to all of the, immigrant families out there who, strive for, improvement, and self-improvement, family improvement. Two, it's a combination of personal recollections, but all of which are couched in highly pragmatic, usable business advice. And so it's very much a personal story, but the way that I'm trying to deliver it is in the context of this unique sort of purview that I've had from, my career started in 1996, right? And to 2026, let's say. So 30 years from the birth of the internet to the dawn of the AI era. And I think when you look back on the annals of tech history, it's a fairly unique period. So, the stuff that I've seen, the stuff that I've done, the stuff that I've survived, including 9/11, by the way. My office was on the 26th floor of the Woolworth building, which is directly diagonal across from Tower 2. The stuff that I've survived is compelling enough to merit sharing, I think. So,
well, we are going to have you back on Critical Mass Business Talk Show when the book launches, and I'm excited for you to put that together. That sounds like a good read and something that'll be valuable for people to pick up. So let us know when that day comes.
Awesome. And I'm not a complicated guy, so it'll be a very easy read.
Good. That's important. Yeah. Leave the fluff to somebody else. Just tell us your stories. You mentioned AI, and what's your view from your fund's perspective and from your professional perspective on AI?
Yeah. So long-term, short-term, right? Long-term, yeah, absolutely lives up to the hype, transformational, as transformational as the birth of the internet and birth of social media and all that stuff, right? I wholeheartedly agree over the long run. Short run, truly don't believe the hype, because there's so many limitations on large open public models and what you can do with it. There's so many burgeoning regulations and therefore illegalities about using that. So I'm talking about OpenAI, Gemini, Claude, all those things, right? So in the short run, to the short to middle run, my overwhelming feeling is that the winners are going to be people who leverage closed models, like proprietary data, into highly specific and vertical areas. And if those vertical areas are previously under technologized, what the hell am I talking about? Mortgage finance, right? I mean, I feel like that hasn't changed in a very long time. There's ways to use AI. So we invested in a company called Greenline with a Y, and it does really unique things in there, and that's great. Just the other day, somebody brought me a deal that's vertical AI for managing the safety of nuclear power plants. Like, okay, great. I mean, it's pretty damn specific.
Right.
It's pretty vertical.
Right.
That kind of thing. In my opinion, those are going to be the big winners.
When you say medium to long term in technology time, what are you talking about?
That's a great question, because it's changing, right? If you ask me next week, it could be different. So short to medium would be, I don't know, 1 to 3 years, 1 to 4 years. Long term, a decade, right?
Yeah, I think that's great insight, because we're in the hype cycle right now of AI.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. And there's a lot to be learned from previous hype cycles.
Yes. Especially from an investor's perspective.
You can't make the mistake of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because it's not that there's nothing there. That's ridiculous. I mean, that might be true for crypto, but it's not true for a lot of other things that fall into the hype cycle, right? And the real art, is to be able to monetize and to create value, right?
Right.
At any point in the cycle.
Right. Sustainable value. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, so Jen Garcia says she loves hearing your insights, and she thanks me for hosting this talk. Thank you, Jen.
Hi, Jen.
Nice. Okay.
Really,
I love it when the audience
amazing work up in LA, by the way. She's with the Goldhirsch Foundation.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Well, thank you for bringing her to the program today. Let's talk about the future, Garnet. You're going to be back on, obviously, with the book, but what else? What's your vision for the future of your fund?
For the fund, so we're raising Fund II. Fund II will be, in the range of 125 to 150. It'll include some of the novel capital formation strategies that you saw in the first one. So, roughly half to 2/3 of the corporations will reinvest, and we're starting to branch out to bigger capital pools, university endowments, foundation endowments, and this sort of thing, because there's enough evidence now in the performance of the first portfolio. So, in the spirit of humble bragging a little bit, so my first portfolio has a demi unicorn, soon to be a unicorn, and it has 4 companies that went from initial investment seed to either an A or a B round. And so that's 5 out of 14. That's not a bad hit rate, right? And so, as the quantitative metrics on this first fund start to prove out the philosophical theses, like you were asking about earlier, about, hey, financial capital married to corporate capital, and does that work? The answer seems to be yes. So one of the reasons we're reaching out to these bigger capital pools is to be able to scale the initial success in the what we consider like our proof of concept, this first fund.
And will you keep the focus on diversity in your investment portfolio as well?
Yeah, so we do have a focus. We think about diversity as essentially a value creation benefit, and not like a hard requirement on our deal, right? So half my portfolio is in fact run by women, yay, and 2/3 by has either a founder or a CXO that is diverse, Black or Latin typically, and that's all awesome. But I have half my portfolio, or a little less than half, whatever, sort of regular folks, all Caucasian teams. And so, we have a very unique perspective on diversity, which is that diversity doesn't come from artificial filters and quotas and requirements and this kind of stuff. You know where diversity comes from? Diversity comes from giving a guy like me and my African-American fund partner the ability to write checks. And that's where diversity comes from. And you'll see it essentially, it's a bad phraseology, but you'll see it trickle down, as more fund managers become diverse, not founders and entrepreneurs. The explosion in like diverse founders is a function of having more folks like me writing checks.
It's just organic and natural.
It really is.
I love that.
And it's funny to me, at the age that I'm at, which is old, it's funny to me to see how counterintuitive that is to so many capital allocators at the fund of funds level, right? It's just we still entertain questions, and I won't name the university because I'm hoping that they'll be an investor in the second fund. But we very elite university sitting in front of the chief investment officer, and the first question across the table, staring at our eyes, to emphasize the importance of the question. The first question is, do you invest for alpha or diversity? It was like, alpha. What's the issue?
Wow.
So, I'm laughing about it, but it was kind of a nerve-wracking moment, right?
Right. Yeah. Kind of, can you believe what you're hearing kind of moment. So if someone would like to connect with you on LinkedIn and learn more about your fund, how do they do that, Garnet?
Just DM me. I have more than 35,000 whatever followers, so it's hard for me to accept invitations, but they can email me or DM me there. And I'm really accessible. I'm also pretty active on Twitter. It's just my first name and my last name. So, you can DM me there. But I think the key is to just, if you follow me and then email me, that's probably the fastest way.
Sounds good. Well, I want to thank you for taking time to be a guest. I told people at the top of the show we're going to have a good show, and you did not disappoint, my friend. Thank you.
Well, I'm super grateful to you and Haley. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share the journey and share some of the some of the sore points and some of the highlights. So I'm grateful. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you to the audience. Jen and the rest. You've been a part of Orange County's longest running business talk show. Garnet's episode now joins our catalog of over 1,500 interviews.
Wow!
If you're an Orange County entrepreneur or you lead a nonprofit and you'd like to be on our show, it's easy. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Rick, R-I-C Franzi, F-R-A-N-Z-I, and send me a message and tell me you'd like to be a future guest. And between Haley, our producer, and myself, we'll get you set up and have you on a future episode. Until the next chance we have to be together. And Jen just sent a message saying, great show. So thank you very much, Jen, for your support. And I hope all of your business decisions will move your organizations in a positive direction.